When to call a priest. Nearly 20 years ago, in fact, right around the time when I came to St. Nicholas Parish here in Indianapolis, I remember reading an article in the local newspaper, which was written by a local Protestant pastor. And I remember reading how he explained that pretty much said to everyone that if you are a member of my church or any church, you should know that that's the way I took it, at least, and I'm not criticizing here. He basically said you should know that I have a life too, and therefore don't call me anytime and always, but when I'm in the office, and that's Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And again, I honestly respect every single pastor, every single priest, every single leader of any religious group, because any leader for that matter, because they do have a very hard job to begin with. But I remember thinking then, I remember when I read that, it was so awkward to me. It didn't make sense, because in the Orthodox Church, you're literally like a firefighter. You're on standby all the time. There is no 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. It's every single day, and it's just the way it works. So, having said that, I'm going to go through several categories of when one should call the priest and when it's normal to call the priest. These are the categories. Finding your spouse, and I'll go to subcategories in just a minute. That's number one. Starting a family is another category. Being with child or pregnant. When you have different feelings going on within your mind, your heart. In the time of illness, old age, and preparation for departure from this life unto life everlasting. General blessings and other reasons. These are the categories that I put them in thanks to my assistants at the church office. In any case, let's start with the first one. So the first one is finding a spouse. The following are the subcategories, if you will. When looking for advice on married life, when planning an engagement, when planning marriage, and when having difficulties in marriage. This is all under that category, finding your spouse, or spouse, we could say. So when one is looking to get married, or wants to get married, or maybe is debating whether or not to get married, it would be a good thing to call a priest and to talk to your priest about that, because the priest will then share different options. Number one, many people don't know that in the Orthodox Church, we generally speaking have two type of marriages, if you will. We have the marriage between husband and wife, within man and woman, and we also have the marriage within a monastic community. In other words, you have two routes that you choose from. You either are in a community of marriage or in community of monasticism, a monastery, where there's all nuns or where there's all monks. Of course, the priest will never make an effort or push any of these, but will make this obvious. The other thing is, you know, when you're looking for advice on married life or wanting to get married, the priest will tell you some of the things which are important in order to choose your spouse. And it has nothing to do with compatibility, sorry for that word, but it has a lot to do with preparation for it. In other words, asking God's help, asking the help of family, and so on and so forth. In any case, those are just some of the examples. When planning an engagement, when you're, in other words, call your priest and ask him, you know, I'm planning to have an engagement. I'm planning to, if you're a man, I'm planning to give a ring to the woman. You know, what should I do? When planning a marriage, especially, is important to contact the priest, because you will go through series of preparations for it, including meeting with the priest several times and discussing certain things about the marriage itself, specifically and mainly understanding the service. You know, the marriage ceremony is so beautiful and so amazing. It would be a shame to partake of it and not understand all those blessings which are bestowed upon you, not understand parts of the marriage ceremony or matrimony, part of that service, not understand it fully and what it means, when what happens, and so on and so forth. And then obviously when having difficulties in marriage, it's a very important, that's an important reason to call the parish priest and ask for some advice. You know, everyone has difficulties in marriage. In fact, difficulties are good to have in marriage, which is what a lot of people don't understand, you know. And it takes time to get out of those difficulties. But the more the difficulties, the stronger the marriage, unless people decide to bail out. That's unfortunate, because many times people who do that, they then get married again, and then they try it again, and it still doesn't work. They bail out and they get married again, and you can do that 20 times, you know. The point is, you have to go through it for the most part. I'm not saying for every single situation. There are different circumstances. In any case, when having difficulties in marriage is the time to call a priest. Okay, starting a family. Here are the things to consider. Prayers for conception, if necessary. When you learn you're with child or pregnant, call the priest. The day you give birth to a child, call the priest immediately. And obviously for baptism. Now let's go back to prayers for conception, especially lately. Many young couples are having problems having children. There are specific and special prayers for conception. The prayers are read, and there's a ceremony actually that's done in church. So don't hesitate to call. It's there for us, these blessings. When you learn you're with the child, the priest will advise you on how to take care of your pregnancy properly, what to do. You know, people don't understand that children who are people who are with child, the child inside the stomach of the mother hears, feels, and therefore it's very important how the mother and the father, for that matter, react. It's good. The baby's life may depend on those 9 months, and that's been scientifically, if you will, proven. The day you give birth to the child, the reason you call a priest is because he then comes to the hospital and reads prayers for the mother and the child. Reads prayers for the mother to be cleansed, to be as pure as possible, so that the child can enjoy that purity. The priest also prays for the healing of the mother's body and mind and heart, and so on and so forth. And then ultimately the priest also prays for the baby to be safeguarded by the angels and the saints, and most of all God, obviously. So these prayers are essential, and they're very important, and they're beautiful. Some of them are a little hard to understand, like, you know, when you pray for the mother and you're asking God to forgive her and to forgive the family all the sins and impurities and so on and so forth. One needs to understand that in a good way, not a bad way. So the priest is not coming there to point a finger at her. We're all sinners, we're all messed up. But the priest is there making sure that all of that is cleansed. If there's something there, and we assume there always is, for it to be, to clean it so that the mother can recover quickly, so that the baby can feel more safe with with such a mother. Beautiful prayers. And then ultimately for the baptism, you know, baptism, one baptizes the child as soon as possible. We don't wait. Why? Because through baptism, we become citizens of paradise. And there's nothing greater, there's no greater blessing on your child than for the child to be baptized. And I'm telling you, I was in situations, I remember 19 years ago, there was a situation, no, 20 years ago, there was a situation I was called to the hospital to quickly baptize a child so that the child doesn't die unbaptized. It's a big thing for us. But there's another reason that we baptize children who are dying, God forbid, is because we want the biggest blessing to be bestowed on them, to give them a chance to recover, to be healed. And I've witnessed that many times. In this specific case, it was so amazing because I went in and the doctor, probably a Roman Catholic person who understood why I was there, said, "Father, please baptize as soon as possible because the vitals are going down." And I'm looking at them, everything's going down. The pressure, the heart rate, the temperature, everything's like falling down pretty fast. So I'm nervous. I get out my bottle of water. I just said, "Blessed is our God." And I remember I skipped all the prayers. I just said, "The servant of God, so and so is baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit." As soon as I did that, because back then I also had small children, I couldn't witness a child dying. So I immediately ran out of the room, and I'm waiting for the family to come out so that I can help them grieve and so on. And they're coming out smiling, laughing, and I'm looking at them and thinking to myself, you know, sometimes people do that, which surprises me. So I thought maybe they're, you know, whatever. In any case, the doctor then shared with me afterwards, as soon as the baby was baptized, the vital signs started going up. The baby is alive to this day. This is why it's very important to bestow this blessing. You know, some people say, well, you should wait till the baby is of age to accept baptism. Well, you know what? You don't wait to ask the baby to eat in order to nourish its body, but you give it because it needs it. The same thing we do with baptism. Okay. Now, being a parent, this is a very crucial one as well. Call the priest regarding raising the child. The priest will tell you some of the important things that you may not be thinking about at this time. Parents are overwhelmed with so many things nowadays. They may not be thinking about, you know, incensing the house with incense so that the child in the house can smell the incense. Praying with the child present, taking the child to church, giving the child Holy Communion. All those things develop a good person and develop a good heart and a good soul. They instill those things, they put them inside this being, that even if the person leaves the church, after a while the person will come back to God. So these things are very important. When you have problems with the preteens and teenagers, you know, before the big problems with the teenagers, but now there's a big problem with the preteens, those who are in middle school. They're watching these things on their phones, on the internet. The parents don't know most of what they're watching because they can't get to them. The children know, they're very smart. They know how to hide things from their parents. So basically, while you're raising your child, barely raising because we're working so much, someone else is actually raising your child at the same time, and you don't even know who and how. And the little child is putting that inside the head, putting that inside the heart. And it could severely damage the child. So one needs to get this advice from the priest, and the priest will tell you, you know, to the best of his ability, how to deal with it, or at least wake you up to it, if nothing else. And then especially for teenagers, you know, it's very important that one gives them freedom, but at the same time watches them as the hawk, because they have their own issues and problems. You know, they live in the present. Teenagers don't see the future. They don't look at the past. They live in the present, and that's very dangerous, because they could do things that could be fatal because they don't think future. They just think now. They're almost like animals in a sense in that age and stage. Then when the child is preparing for college, you know, the priest can not only offer you things to prepare the child for for college, but can also offer you practical things like scholarships and things of that nature. But then also for a person to meet with the priest before going to college, so that priest can prepare the person for some of the questions that will be out there that may confuse a college person, and also to remind the college person to keep the purity and insanity as much as possible. Very, very important, and many other things that the priest can also share with the person preparing for college. And then the other thing is making sure that the family stays in contact with respect to the freedom of the college person, or the young lady or young man. Also to make sure that they are in connection with the church. We send out 2 gift cards with a little note, very short note, to all of our college students, just keeping them in contact, but giving them their freedom as well to do what they want to do and to go through their craziness. Hopefully they can go through that in their teen years, but if not, at the college, and then it passes them by, and then they start coming back, which is something that many of the parents, grandparents wait for, and sometimes are worried, like the end of the world, so-and-so did this or did that. They will come back, they're good people. Okay, the other category is middle age crisis. Call the priest, because these are serious things for women between the ages of 30 and 40, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. For men, late 50s, early 60s. These can be fatal times, and if one is not careful, it can be bad. For women especially, it can go to their physiological physical state, their mental state. For men, it both, but just in a different way. Men tend to I don't want to go into details what men think of that age and stage, but they need to be grounded. They need to be helped through this to understand, yes, their wife is no longer this model, and yes, they may still have the looks and whatever, but they need to respect the woman, and the woman, they need to respect the fact that their woman or their wife was with them for these years and gave them what she gave them. And then women at the same time need to also watch their men at that stage. Now, men, the same thing with the women. When the woman starts having struggles, the man has to be there. Her husband needs to be there. Her friend needs to be there. Needs to go through whatever and everything and anything to support their spouse. The other thing is depression or oppression. Don't immediately call counselors and psychologists. I'm not saying that's a bad idea, God forbid, but the priest will tell you that you need to approach those things from in two ways, both spiritually and physically and mentally. And the priest will then direct you and help you find if necessary, a psychologist and even a psychiatrist, God forbid, it's necessary. But don't immediately do it without consulting with your parish priest. And if you need to, if the parish priest says something awkward, don't hesitate to talk to the bishop or to the dean when he comes into the parish, because the priest may be totally wrong. So unusual thoughts or actions, if these things happen or come upon you, call the priest and talk to him about that. When you need confession, and confession is not only cleansing of soul to get it out of you, which is a perfect thing that Christ left for us, but it's also an opportunity to have a counseling session, if you will. I hate to be sound professional here. But most of the priests, I know what I went through, but most of the priests in the Orthodox Church are not people who bought their license for $25. They're people who are very educated in all kinds of fields, in philosophy, in psychology, in history, in theology. So these are widely educated people, most of the priests. Now, some priests came into priesthood in different ways, but most of the priests, they studied these things very intensely, and they for the most part know what they're talking about. Okay, time of illness, older age and departure. During the time of illness, one obviously needs to call the priest to be anointed, to receive Holy Communion, to receive things that will help the person be filled with the presence of Christ. It may not be healed, but it will be filled with the presence of Christ. As someone said, Christ did not come to get rid of the suffering, he came to fill it with himself. So call a priest. He has all kinds of things that he can offer you: holy bread, holy water, holy oil, holy unction, holy communion. I mean, these things do matter and they do help. When you are old and you're suffering with different things, either regret or whatever, call your priest, sit down with him and talk to him. I mean, I've experienced that many times, thanks be to God and our people who have trusted me. I've sat down with elders and talked about so many things, which are absolutely, it's absolutely amazing. Then when preparing for departure, that's something that rarely people don't like to talk about, preparing for death. But lately, I've been talking to people from the parish about that, and they're very open. They say, I'm so-and-so years old and the time is coming. What do I do? What do I do? And the priest will tell you, some basic things which you know, but you may forget. Ask forgiveness of everyone. Make sure that you restore your relationship with everyone, and make sure your relationship with God is restored. Make sure you plan your time your time in the dying bed. Make sure you plan your funeral so that there's no misunderstandings around the family. Make sure the family is set up so that they don't argue after your funeral. Make sure that you set up your prayers in the church after you die. That's our responsibility. We should not leave it to others. It's ours. We look at death as birth for us, our personal birth. So we're preparing for being born into the kingdom of heaven to then live eternally. And therefore, we should approach it in such a way. We shouldn't hide away from it or shy away from it. Buying cemetery plots, paying them off, doing all those things. It's normal. Don't shy away from it. When someone in the family is preparing, when you know that someone in the family member is preparing for death, call the priest and said, what do I do? What do we do? My neighbors, in fact, right behind me, when their mother, they're Protestant Christians, but they're good people. And when their father, in fact, was dying, they called me and said, neighbor, what do we do? And I said, read the Psalms to them. And after they've done that, they called me after the death of their father, and they said, we never knew this, but this brought so much peace to us. And I'm thinking to myself, I wish you knew how much peace it brought to your father. So those are the type of things that the priest will remind you of. Now, immediately after death, the priest is called, no matter what time it is, 24/7. And the priest usually comes to the house or to the hospital or to the hospice and reads the prayers, or he may do them at home. If something is going on, he may do the prayers at home and ask you to be his hands there at the place where your loved one has passed on. But these prayers are unbelievable prayers. When the person is preparing for death, there's a series of prayers that are read above that person, in the name of that person and for those present there. These are amazing prayers. Now, some of these prayers may be a little rough on the edges, but that's because we don't understand them. But once you go into understanding these prayers, then you get to appreciate them. Certainly the person who is dying appreciates them. Then when a person dies, we read those prayers after that as well. When arranging a funeral, very important to call the priest. Even before that happens, obviously, because the priest will help you not only from a spiritual perspective, but also even from a financial perspective. I'm always there with the families, making sure that no one takes advantage of them, no one, and making sure I put them in place, but also give them the freedom to do what they choose to do. For example, I've told my family, I said, one of these days, hopefully I'll live to be older and you all have jobs and live a good life. When I die, I want you to pick out the most expensive stuff you can, the most expensive casket, vault, most expensive funeral home, and then bury me in the least expensive stuff, but take the difference and give it to the poor and the needy and the churches and the monasteries to pray for my soul, because I don't need an expensive casket, but I do need blessings and I do need prayers. So this is the kind of things that the priest will share. Then when a person dies, you have the funeral, and the funeral is arranged. There are many things around the funeral which should make the funeral a beautiful event in a sense, but also a very deep and prayer type of event. You know, waking us up here, we will also die. We need to pray for the soul of our loved one. You know, the death of a person, we assume the worst and we pray and hope for the best. That's the way we approach it, because we don't know what's going on after a person dies for sure. We assume, but we really don't know. So we want to assume the worst and we want to pray immediately, because that's what we could do for our loved one. We can, if we do the celebration of life, let's just celebrate. That's fine too, but I got to tell you, the person on the other side may not want you to celebrate. He or she may want you to pray. And here you're celebrating, and they can't come back and say, hello, I need your prayers, I need your help. Celebrate when you're getting married or you're being, buying a new car or a new house. But now I need your prayers. So this is what a priest wakes us up for and prepares us. That's why we should call him. Then blessing of the gravestone, preparing to order a gravestone. The priest will tell you, make sure there's a cross on that. Make sure if you say something, you say something that will benefit others and that will be a prayer for the departed. Like one cemetery in Germany, it says, at the entrance of it, it says, please pray for us. Do not simply pass by us, because soon you will be one of us. It's a deep thing that will help people. So that monument may be helpful by having a cross, by having something important that's on there, but at the same time not to spend ridiculous amount of money on these type of things. Okay, general blessings. Other things to call a priest for. For example, when you're celebrating your Slava, your patron saint day, or names day, call the priest for a special blessing. Sanctification of the home. I don't know if you knew, but there's a blessing of the home that's done every year. But then there's the sanctification of the new home. When you get into a new home or an apartment, doesn't have to be yours, but the place where you're residing needs to be sanctified. In fact, it's sanctified just like the church is. Pretty much the service is pretty much the same. You call a priest to sanctify the place where you will live. I'm telling you, the home that's in behind this phone, but in front of me, we didn't sleep one night before we sanctified it, before we blessed it, and then we had the bishop come and sanctify it. And then sprinkling on the home with holy water after theophany. Sometimes people do it during Lent. What we do at St. Nicholas Church, we bless waters on theophany, baptism of our Lord in January, and then after that the priest spends 2 months going around and taking that water to each home and blessing it with it, praying for the family, taking the cross inside that home, taking a blessing of Christ, bringing the gospel inside the home from church, a little gospel. So that blessing of the waters is the renewal of that sanctification that we already did. So the home is sanctified and then it's renewed by these blessings each year. Blessing of the vehicles, whatever it is you ride. Blessing of the animals. That's one thing I didn't put in here, and I'm gonna include it just now. Blessing of for animals not to, that this will, we assume it will help the animals not get as sick as they do, or keep bad things from around them, and so on and so forth. Blessing of the vehicles that you ride in every day. Before and after big events, doing a blessing, and big event, it can be something like graduation. I get called all the time to go and offer the prayer for the meal, or to be there, just to be there, not representing, but bringing Christ there, in other words, is a big is a big thing. So call your priest for before and after big events. You know, we have a lady in our parish who's into politics. She gets blessings all the time. I don't even know what kind of politics she's in or what she follows, but I do know she asks for blessings, and we offer it so that God can be present there as well. Call the priest for Thanksgiving prayers. This is something that people rarely do. We call priests for different needs, but giving thanks to God, we don't do. I will tell you that I've had those services in the parish, thanks be to God, where people have called and said, we've been married for 60 years, can we come to church and somehow give thanks to God? We don't have renewing of vows and all of that, but they understood it. We just want to give thanks to God for our children, for our grandchildren, for our marriage, for all those things. Give thanks to God for having a job. There's a service of thanksgiving that can be done in church or at home. Let's give thanks to God, not only ask Him for things, but give Him thanks as well. For any kind of and every kind of need, you can literally call the priest, and you should. That's something that we are here for. Now, I'm going to finish off by saying the following. Other reasons to call a priest. When commemorating the living and the departed during liturgy, to send a list of names inside the altar is a reason to call a priest and tell him you're going to do this, or send it to him to pray inside the altar. Very big thing. Probably the biggest thing is to be commemorated during divine liturgy. Obviously, at the church and many of the churches, we have names of our people, but still, don't hesitate to fill out the list of living, the list of departed. Make sure they're all baptized Orthodox Christians, because it would be unfair to put those who are not part of the church inside the church without their consent. So make sure everyone is baptized Orthodox. You put their names. If people are not baptized Orthodox, put a line and say non-Orthodox, and the priest will say those prayers in private for the people who are not part of the church. When you need a Bible or a prayer book, call the parish priest. He will get it to you. Doesn't matter if it's a $50 or $100 book. You know, I know when someone asks me for a Bible, I don't care if it's $1 million, I'm going to get it to them. Or a prayer book. You need those two things in the house: the cross and icon. Those are basic things: the Bible, the cross, the icon, a prayer book, the book of Psalms, which are in the Bible, or separately, that you could pray. When is another reason to call a priest is to receive an obedience. And what I mean by that is, in church, in parish life, there are many things that need to be done, and we need people to do them, because if we didn't have so many people, we wouldn't be able to do 10% of the things that we usually do. And thanks be to God, we have good people. But don't wait to be called. Call the priest and say, this is what I love to do. This is what I can do. This is what I'm blessed with. Give me an obedience. Tell me what I should do from now on. Just like at a monastery, you know, each monk or each nun, they have an obedience. They have certain things that they do. You take care of the garden. You take care of the chickens. You take care of the land, the sheep. You take care of the whatever. In the church as well, you know, you need to have, if you're a member of a church, if you're a parishioner, if you're one of the faithful of the church and you don't have an obedience, you have to have one. You can't be a member of one community, part of one family, and not participate. Now, it may be, you may be in a wheelchair without being able to move at home. You could still do a lot of good. You could still receive a bunch of names for prayer from the priest, and you could be praying for those who are unable to pray, or those who don't have time to pray, or those who desperately need prayer. So everyone can do something. You just need to call and ask for a specific thing. And last but not least, you should also call the priest when something he said or did bothered you or bothers you. I had a conversation with one of the parishioners recently. It made me feel so good, because it brings me closer to that person when someone approaches me like that. And I get approached like that quite often. I am very lucky, though, I have to say, that people do choose their words. Only maybe 2 or 3 times in the 21 years that I've been in this parish have people not chosen their words, and it did hurt me severely. But it's okay, you know. I'm as they say in America, I'm a big boy. At least I should be, and I should overcome. And maybe that was better for me and my growth, spiritual growth, than those who didn't hurt me. I will tell you though that try your best when you do talk to your priest to make your, as Patriarch Pavle said, let your words be soft, but your arguments strong. Keep in mind when you do say that something has bothered you, choose your words and choose your actions, mainly because the priest does not hear this only from you. He hears it from many others, believe it or not. And if he heard only, if people were strong in words and rough in words, and imagine priest having to endure this for many, many years. You know, there was an article I read, well, let me just say this, it would be tough for the person. It is tough, I can tell you that from experience. So choose your words, but do bring it up. Don't hold it in, because there may be a misunderstanding. You know, you have no idea how many times I've gone through situations where I would be talking to someone and at the end I would ask them, can you please repeat what I said to you? And they would repeat something totally opposite from what I was trying to relay or say, you know. And I always say, you know, if I said or did something, if I'm talking, if I'm saying something and it's something that's not good, it's from me. And if it's good, it's from God. So if it's bad, it's from me. Forgive me, help me overcome it. And if it's good, it's from God. He's talking and he's doing his job, if you will. But the other thing I wanted to tell you is, you know, feel bad for us in a sense and help us. Don't be too rough. But on the other hand, I have to tell you, I remember reading an article many, many years ago. They were saying an average age, lifespan of a priest, of a pastor. And they did a study in America, and they didn't consider Orthodox clergy. I read it in the article. I read who they considered, and they were saying that the average age is about like 45 years of age. Like people die, like pastors die at around that age if they've been pastors for a long time. And then I compare that myself to our priests in our Orthodox Church. It seems like they never retire. You know, I remember when I was a young priest thinking some of these priests should retire, you know. And then I now I obviously I'm a little grown up and I see things a lot different. But not only that, but they live to be 90 and 100. I remember one priest in Omaha, Nebraska. He was an active priest till like 94 years of age. And I compared, how does that compare? You know, how does that make sense? These priests live a long life in the Orthodox Church, and these other pastors, for the most part, mostly Protestant pastors, they live to a very short life. Well, this is my reasoning, and it may be wrong, but they both deal with the same issues and problems. Because it's not, you know, emotions can go up and down within a day. Can you imagine I remember how many times I would have a baptism of a baby at 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday, a funeral of a baby at 11 a.m., a wedding at 2 p.m., a memorial service at 4 p.m., a confession at 5 p.m., a Vesper service at 6 p.m., and then a meeting at 8 p.m. Imagine those emotions up and down, just one day. That's tough on a person, mentally and emotionally, and then obviously physically puts a toll on you. But the explanation that I had was both the Protestant and the Orthodox Christian clergy have the same things to deal with. There's a big difference though. One is ordained, and the other one, even though they say they're ordained, they're not. For the most part, not for the most part, but they don't have the same ordination. My ordination I could trace back to Apostle Andrew. The Protestant ordination was from one person to the other. It has no connection to the apostles and ultimately to Christ. Now, whether or not Christ blesses them, that's a whole different story. I don't doubt that he does, because he is good towards all his children. There are no difference between us. He loves us all the same. We're all the same. In fact, we in the Orthodox Church say a lot of times that there are many lambs outside the church and there are many wolves inside the church. So we understand that very well. But I'm just saying that taking the same weight without having that special grace of the Holy Spirit that a priest receives at the time of ordination in the Orthodox Church is that helps you. There's no doubt. You read those prayers of ordination and you're amazed. It said, I remember one of the things it says, the bishop is praying for the Holy Spirit to come upon the priest, to give him strength, to give him wisdom, to give him love, and then at the end it says, and to fill in all the blanks that are within this person, and to basically heal all the little details, and to basically help with all the things that need to be helped. These are, and they're done, the ordination of an Orthodox priest is done in the kingdom of heaven because it's done during divine liturgy, and it can only be done during divine liturgy. So there you go. I know it was long, but I hope it's beneficial. God bless you.